Welcome back. Today we're going to tie the articulated version of the DFT Sculpin. This is one that I've been working on a little bit here. Took it out and finally got to actually give it a good amount of time on the water in an actual fishing situation, and it performed pretty well. It had didn't put anything in the net, but I had 3 or 4 fish come up to it. One of them, right as it hit the water, it pretty much popped it right back out and then chased it all the way back to the boat. So pretty interesting time. Really happy with the way this thing swims. Like I said, there's going to be a couple more variations of this in the future. A little burr on that hook there. There's going to be a couple of variations on this in the future, but this is the second one that we're going to do. You know, the standard one we did just on the single hook earlier. So we're going to go ahead and start on this. For the back hook, I go with an MFC 7050 size 6, and I just take my thread to the back like so. Just same as always, same landing spot right here at the ascent of the barb of the hook, right where it starts to go up. And then I want to go with a set. We're gonna, and obviously if you can't tell by now, we're gonna do this one in yellow today. Just get a quick measurement on this. We're gonna get our deceiver tails going down the back, and this is off of a soft tackle Chickabou patch. Before I use the MFC barge Schlappen, we're gonna go with this for the yellow version today. Either one will work. If you want to go with the straight yellow as well, you can. It's entirely up to you as to how you want to put this together as far as color combinations and everything are concerned. But anyhow, like I was saying, we're just going to get that section going right down the back there, ending right about at the point of the adjustment lever. And right as that's sitting there, it's a little kicked off to the side. That looks a little better. Just gave that a little twist. Now I'm going to take just some gold, and this is just gold holographic Flashabou. The one thing that I did find on this, I seem to like these when I have less flash in them. The last one that I did, for the video at least, I had a good amount of flash in that, and after actually being up on the boat and being able to look down at it, cutting the flash down a little bit seems to be a little bit better to me. But obviously, I mean, just tailor that to how much flash you want in your fly. I wound up taking a couple of strands out while I was on the river, and it was a bright sunny day too, so I mean, but it was reflecting just a ton, almost to the point where it was like obscene. So I just cut that down a touch. There we go. I've got 3 strands going right down the tail there. As you can see, we've got them sitting right together. And then we're going to go into our cream Marabou. I'm going to take these and I'm going to set this. And this is just going to go down the back, just like it did before on the articulated, or on the single, I should say. And I just want to make this a cover, so it's going to have that overall consistent tan or cream color on the bottom portion of this fly. So I'm just going to take that and run that down the side about to the halfway point, trim that off, and then I'm going to take one on the opposite side. We're going to go right down that side section as well. Just peel all of that stuff up, trim that off, and then we're going to run this down the opposite side. Measure it out for length. That one's just a shade longer, so we'll pull that back a touch. These neighborhood dogs, man. Driving me absolutely nuts here lately. These things never shut up. Alright, anyhow, enough of that. So there you go. We have our cream section on the underneath side. And now just to give us a little bit of cover, I'm going to go back to this Chickabou patch. And I'm just going to pick one piece out of here. I'm not going to really worry too much about having a lot of bulk in this one. I'm just going to go with one Chickabou patch or one Chickabou plume. And for now, I'm just going to wet that and set that right over the top, running the same length back that I have the cream, and that stuff just wants to twist on me slightly. So like I said, same length back that I have the cream, and this is just a little bit of top cover. It doesn't rob any motion on your deceiver tail or anything. It's just a little bit of top cover to where when you have everything else tied in, it's going to have that nice transition toward the back. And then start with some lighter stuff in the back, and then you'll see as I go forward on this, I'm going to add some more bulk. I may wind up with two, even three pieces of Chickabou in there, and that way it just gives that V taper that the Sculpin have, starting at the head where it's really wide, and then it comes down to that V and it really tapers down. This thing has a phenomenal profile in the water. Really gives a good Sculpin appearance. So now what we want to do, I'm not too happy with those deceiver tails, but it'll do the trick for this one. I mean, they're not awful by any means, but they could be a little bit thicker on the top. But that's just me getting picky. So now I'm going to form my first dubbing loop. This is going to be for the rabbit that's going to go in after the fact. So I'm just going to take a clamp. I'm going to set that off to the side. And then I'm going to go with another dubbing loop. Like so. This is going to be for the dubbing. Now I use this smaller hook on the back. I use this size 6. Mainly because my deceiver tail's sticking out a little bit longer, and really the only purpose I want out of this back is to give me that S-swim and to have that that tail flapping around in the back, causing commotion and everything. So I tend to go smaller on this. If you want to go bigger, by all means go ahead, but I like this as a 6. It seems like it has a good taper all the way up, even though I go a little bit longer with a 4X in the front, and I'll explain that as I go on. But for now, we're going to go with some Minnow Belly Ice Dub, and I'm going to take this the whole way to the front. And if you go with a bigger size, anything bigger than a size 6, stop in the middle, throw another stack in there, and then continue on like we'll do on the front. But for this purpose, with the size 6, I'm just going to throw this in here, and I'm only going to have one stack over the top of Chickabou on our back hook. So just give that a quick spin. I don't want that real tight. Just a quick loop on there. Make sure that you're not catching your back dubbing loop that you already have in place, and then just like that, spin that right to the front. We have all of that nice picked out ice dub, and like I said before, on the original, I just absolutely love this Minnow Belly ice dub, the way that it looks, the reflective properties, the UV that it has. It's just absolutely perfect. It shows through so much. When you see this thing in the water, this stuff stands out. You won't think it when we get the rabbit wrapped on there and everything. You really wouldn't think it all that much, but it does show through a ton, and I just really like the way that it comes through. So what I want to do now is grab my other piece here and get that strand out of the way. I'm going to grab my other piece or my other loop that I have set up here. I want to tie this in, just whip or a half hitch right there. And now we're going to go to our rabbit belly. This is a flesh rabbit. Let me get that right there and try not to mess that up too much. This is just flesh rabbit hide, and the same as before on this one, we're going to take this off the hide. Let me get a little bit more length here. We're going to take this off the hide with the hairline material clamp, and we're going to get that thrown in. I'm just going to, while I have this out and I have two material clamps, save a little bit of time and get a second one in there, or get a second one set off to the side for later. So there's one. I'll set that away for now. Get our second piece right here, and I'm just going against the grain on the hide there. I got a little piece on the bottom that I didn't quite catch how I wanted to. There we go. Against the grain on the hide. We're using a size 6, and I'm gonna wrap this in sparse. I'm not really going one wrap right in front of the next, so I don't need a ton on here. I just want enough to give me some fill. And then I'm just going to even this up real quick. Throw this in my loop. Just like so. And then work that up toward the top just slightly. Give that a spin, and I'm really going to tighten this one up good. There's 1, 2, and I'm going to give this a third, and it's just going to condense that area down, and it's going to pull those fibers together even more than when you keep it loose. So then, like I said, I'm just spiraling this right to the front. I don't want one wrap right in front of the next. I just have it spiraled so I'm able to have that minnow belly come through. And I'll try and spin this around to where you can see it right like so. I don't know how well the camera's picking it up because it's a flesh color, but there you go. If I haven't had my hand there, you can see some of those fibers come through. And like I said, I really like the way that those things come together in the water. So I'm just going to trim the top of this down slightly. Peel this stuff back, give myself a good thread base. And we're good to go. The top section I'm not really too awful concerned about. I want to make sure that I have good coverage on the bottom though. So now we're going to go into our Chickabou patch again. I'm going to start really getting into some added bulk on this. I know for a fact I'm going to go with at least 2 pieces here. So my first piece, if it's a little busted up, I'm not too concerned about it. My second piece, I want to have a nice full section there. So I'm going to take a really good bulky piece there. I'll set these 2 off to the side. This first one, as you can see, I mean, it's a little chewed up. It's not the best piece at all, but I'm not, like I said, I'm not really concerned about that. I just have this in for added bulk. Now I want to make sure that my length is going to be good, so it's going to go all the way back into the halfway point on that first section that I tied in. And this is where I was saying, if you have anything bigger than a size 6, unless you have just exceptional Chickabou, you're probably going to have to stop this at the halfway point, throw in a stack over top, finish it all the way through so it looks uniform and your Chickabou doesn't wind up short on you. So we have that setting as we want it right there, and now I'm going to go into this little heavier piece, and I'm going to throw this one in as well. This is going to really round out the bulk for us on this. Set that right over the top of the other one. If anything, just slightly longer. Go ahead and get that secured right on top of the hook with some loose wraps, and then pull down. There we go. And then I'll get a wrap right in front of that eye, and then go ahead and trim this piece off. We have the bulk that we want for that section right there. There we go. That was bugging me. We have the bulk that we want for that section sitting right there. As you can see, everything's laying back how we want it. Everything looks good. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit in the front with a few thread wraps, get a whip finish in, and we're on to our back piece, or our front hook, I should say. One, two. All right, we're sitting good there. Get that out of our way, and then I'm just going to touch this up with a little bit of whatever I pick out of here. Tan it is. Just going to touch that up with a little bit of tan on the top. The bottom side I'm not too worried about. I'm not really worried about much any of that. It's just my OCD making me want to cover that up. So looking down over the top of this, you can see that we have that nice section, one going right into the next. Got that nice mottled back that the Sculpin have, and then on the underneath side you've got that nice olive section. Now I'm going to take my wire wherever I threw it. I cut a piece off here earlier and I set it off to the side. And who knows where the hell I put it. Who knows where the hell I put it. Anyhow, just cut another piece, I guess. There we go. Get that piece cut. That's short. Way too short. That's better. And then I'm going to go with 2 red beads on this. And get those secured into place over the wire, and then we'll set that off to the side and go on to our front hook. The front hook I go back and forth on. This one's a 7008 from MFC. It's a size 4. It's a 4X long. Typically, I'll either go with this. This is the one that I probably use the most. The other one that I'll go to is a 7050, a 3X long in a size 1. They're about the same length. I tend to like this down eye a little bit better for some reason. So that's what I go with on this. And I'm going to go right where I'm going to start my head with the deer hair. Mark that out with where I start my thread. Don't put anything past that for consistency purposes. Once you tie a couple of these, just like any pattern, once you tie enough of them, you know where to start. You just get a feel for it. But starting out, I mean, I'd leave myself probably about a 1/2 inch right there for the deer hair work. So now we'll get these 2 connected, and we'll set in our wire here, just some loose wraps. There we go. Our wires touching, or our beads touching, and then we have about the same width right here as we do with the 2 beads. If you want to, you can go a little bit longer. Just don't lengthen it out so much to where it's going to wind up fouling on itself and making it difficult to fish. So we're going to wrap these forward, bring them all the way up. I'm going to double these over now. Remembering to stay behind where you tied everything off, or where you started your thread, I should say. So there we have those setting in place. I want to go right over the top with these, just kind of trim these out around my halfway point. Now when I say halfway point, I mean halfway for the body section, which is going to be where you started your thread and where you left off with it here. So your midway point on the body section. Don't count the head section into that middle portion. Just get those secured and we're ready to start this back section. Back section of the front hook, I should say. Clarify that a little bit. We're going to do the same thing as before. We're going to put in our Marabou and we're going to run that back into where the rabbit is. Let me get that out. We're going to run that back into our rabbit. So there you can see we're going into that section right there. These two colors are pretty close, the flesh and the cream. Honestly, once it gets wet, they just kind of mix together. The Marabou is maybe just a shade darker, if anything, but honestly, I mean, it really doesn't make that big of a difference. It's not going to hurt anything. Like I said, they mesh together pretty well once they're in the water. But if you have a big contrast between the two, try and find something that's at least in the ballpark, because it'll get pretty apparent. Alright, same thing on the opposite side. We're just going to measure this out. Same length. Putting everything together here. Going back to the ascent of the barb of the hook. And then I'm going to take this to my midway point, right where I left off from doubling the wires over. And that's going to be my marker for where I want to stop with the rabbit and the dubbing. So once again, we're going back to the Chickabou here. I got two pieces. I'll save that one for later. Neither of these are great, so I'm going to use these as my bottom piece, just for some fill. And then same as before, halfway into the previous stack that we tied in. So bring that back just slightly, right to the halfway point, same length as your cream that you have underneath, and then just tie that in, secure it. There we go. You can see we're going back into the halfway point, halfway into that one, halfway into that, and we're going to continue that theme the whole way up. Now we're going to progress, like I had said before, we're going to progress and get thicker on the Chickabou as we go. So I'm really going to search through here for something that's really prime. Oh, what do we got there? That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. It's got some good thickness to it. Nice and webby. Just peel that stuff back. Wet that down if you have to. Sometimes they get a little wild. And it's easier to work with them if you wet them first. So then, same as before, just tie that one in right over the top, and then make sure that we have that consistency going right down the back. Right down the back. Everything looks good. We're going to take this, we're going to make two dubbing loops again. That one's for the rabbit. Grab this clip and I'll secure that back there. This one's for the ice dub. Can shorten that one up a little bit. I lengthen the one that I use for the rabbit out a good bit. Hey, that's enough. Knock it off. Oh man, you can tell it's getting warmer out. There's all sorts of festivities out there, and the pups let me know about them. Anyhow, I lengthen that one out so I'm able to grab it with that hair clamp in the back. Otherwise, I would keep it shorter, but it keeps it more manageable if I have it that way, so I don't have it flying around all over the place. So we'll go ahead and throw in our ice dub. Like I said before, we're going to keep this on the loose side. And I didn't half hitch. Remember that we're using the halfway point on our body. Don't go halfway on the length of the hook, halfway of what's going to be your body. And then we'll go right through here, right to our halfway point. Tie that off, and then we're going to go back to our rabbit. Get that out of the way. Back to the rabbit, which I have sitting over here. Now I don't need all of this because I'm only going halfway on the length of this hook. So I'm going to take half of this and I'm going to transfer it over to this other clamp. Just like so. There we go. Now I'm going to have that for my third piece, or for my third section of rabbit. Remember, these are nice open looped wraps on this rabbit, so we allow the ice dub to come through. Grab that, set that into place, and I just want to spread that out just slightly with my hands, just kind of space that out some. Push that one piece through. And then typically about 3 spins on this dubbing loop tool gets me where I want to be on this. Old Cameron. There we go. I have that setting right where I want it. Go right underneath. 1, 2. And you can see it's not heavy. There's not a ton in there. Everything's pretty clean for us. Find your halfway point, and then this is where we're going to tie in more stacks of Chickabou. We've got a piece that's a little beat up here, but still on the thicker side. We're going to place that in first on the underneath side, just for some bulk. Like I said before, we're going to put that in first, secure that into place, and I'm going to take that right up to where I started my thread to let me know where the deer hair starts. Halfway point on that body, you can see there's half right there, half right there. That's a pretty beat up piece. I may need 2 extra on this one unless I can find a really good one here. Let's see what we got. That one's really chewed up. So is that one. There we go. That's a pretty good piece right there. That's nice and thick. And there's 2 pieces in it, so I'm going to keep those 2 together. Make sure that I have my length the same. I'm just going to peel this stuff back, trim that real quick, and I'm going to throw these 2 in together. It's going to give me the bulk that I want for this center section. So we'll throw that down there. Secure those 2 plumes in. We've got everything going right down the center section. A little canted right there, but there we go. We've got that going right down our center, and it's laying back into that last piece that we threw in, and everything gives us that nice clean mottled look the whole way back. So then just clean these up with some thread wraps. Got one piece there that I'll just cut. And we're looking good. Last time for this process right here. Lengthen this out, one for the rabbit, one for the ice dub. Get that set in, out of your way. Same thing with the ice dub loop. Set that where it belongs, and then go right to your tie-in point where you started your thread. And tools all over the place here. Alright, last one on the ice dub. We're going to set this in. And there may come a time to where, well, no, probably not, because I have the rabbit. I was going to say, if you wanted to, you could probably sub like some micro UV puller. Not the long stuff, because you know that'll wind up just getting caught everywhere with the rabbit. You could probably sub some micro UV puller if you want, but I just like the way that this stuff looks right here, so I'm sticking with it for now. That may change a year from now. I start experimenting, or a new material comes out and I sub that. This does take a little bit of time to get these tied in, but I really like the way that it shows up in the water, so I take the little bit of extra time to tie this exactly how I want it. So now, last piece with the rabbit here. Half hitch one more time. And I want to flip this around just like that. There we go. These things are awesome. Saves you a ton of frustration trying to manipulate this stuff. So then, once again, just have those into place, spin this up. 1, 2, and then a third. Open loop that right to your tie-in point. And then I just want to go right over the top of that, clean it up with a few thread wraps. And then we're going to have one more section of rabbit that we're going to tie in here, and that's going to be for our collar, or for our throat, I should say. So we'll get that tied in, cleaned up really good. Just force those fibers down, and you can see the nice transition that we have all the way back on both the rabbit and the Chickabou on the top. So I forgot to pick up my red. Where'd you go? I forgot to pick my red rabbit hair, or rabbit fur, out of the back room before starting this video. So I'm going to go with the rust that I have sitting here. It'll be a nice offset. I mean, not as good as the red is, but honestly, I mean, you really only see a little bit of this underneath, so I'm not too awful concerned about it. But for the ones that I tie commercially, they're always red. But if you want to throw a little rust in there, that would work, or anything that's really going to offset your color here. So we're going to go with one more loop, and this one can be pretty short here. One more loop, we'll throw this in, spin these up, and then we'll start working on the hair head. One, two, get one more in there just to compress that a little bit more. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, just like so. And this is just going to be a throat on the bottom section. That's all I want out of this, so I'm going to get that wrapped into place, secure that in really good, and then trim this off. And then I just force those hairs down to the bottom and then tie right over top of this to where I'm going to start my collar. It's just forcing that hair down to the bottom, and you can see that little offset that we have right there in that rust color. Like I said, the red's going to pop a little bit more, but this is a good enough offset instead of me running to the back and taking more time to shoot this video to get the red. I'll just go ahead and throw this in. So, just a couple of clean thread wraps all the way through. Now this is where you can make a decision on if you want to throw in more Chickabou or not. I just throw one piece in just to give myself a little bit of a little bit more of a transition. I try and find a piece that's a little bit on the thicker side. But I don't get too awful concerned about this because the collar is going to wind up coming to the back and covering a decent amount of this up. So if you don't want to throw this piece in, that's fine, you don't have to. I'm just going to throw it in there just because I don't know why, honestly. I don't know why. You'll see when I put the collar in, you don't see this at all, but I don't know, maybe it's just me looking at it right now and I can see that empty space when it's not there, so maybe that's why. There we go. We're moving right along. We're on to the deer hair head. I would like to tell you we're about done, but that would be a lie because the hair work on this one, as you saw on the first one, is a little more involved than your standard hair head. So I've got some black deer hair that I dyed. Yeah, I don't need that much. This is body hair, not the belly, so if you want to use the belly, you can. Just use a lot less of it because it'll make that head pretty buoyant. So I'm gonna take 3 stacks of this, and I'm gonna set it in the comb right now, and then I'll mix this stuff up as I go, and then we're gonna have cream on the underneath side. So that'll be my collar right there, and then I'm gonna grab 2 more stacks of this black. And just prep these on the side. I was going to prep this stuff before the video, but I figured if I did that, inevitably I'd wind up reaching for something and throwing the deer hair all over the place and knocking it out of the comb. So I'll just take the little bit of extra time to prep this stuff while the film's rolling. 1, 2, that looks pretty good right there. Set that in. And then we're going to go with our yellow on top of the 2 black stacks. If you don't want to, you honestly don't have to. You don't have to mix the deer hair. I just really like the way that it looks, and it keeps that overall mottled effect going all the way back. And dang, hair all over the place here. It keeps that mottled effect going all the way back, and I really like the look that it gets. That is more so for me than it is the fish, I'm sure, because they don't really see that section too awful well. That's more on the top. Well, underneath I guess it does, but anyhow, like I was saying, that's more for me than the fish. I just like the way that it looks. So now I'm going to mix these 2 together, grab my stacker, bring it over here, get that out of the way. We're done with that. And like I said before, it's like I'm just shuffling a deck of cards. Just moving the top to the bottom to the top, and just mixing this stuff in really nice to where I get that nice mottled effect with the deer hair. I typically like the yellow a little bit heavier than I do the black, just because the black will take over that yellow really quick. So I'd usually go about 2 parts yellow to 1 part black. But however you want to mix it up, it's up to you. Throw that in the stacker, make sure that we've got a good mix. That looks pretty good. Yeah, that's a pretty good mix. I could stack that a little bit better though. Could get a little bit better of a stack. There we go. Now, this section here is collar only, and I want it going right to the point of my tip, or the point of my hook, if it's a 4x long. If it's a 3x long, I'll take it between the point and the barb of the hook. I'll lengthen that collar out slightly. But if you go between the point and the barb of the hook on a 4x long, you're going to wind up with way too much collar. So I just cut that off square, bring this around, and I'll go 1, 2 fairly loose wraps. I'll get a third in there, and then I'll press this down, and I'll go 1, 2, and really tighten that up good. And you can see we'll have a half moon effect underneath on that section right there. Everything's looking clean for us. Now we're going to start with the actual head portion of this fly on the deer hair work. So we're going to go 1 stack cream underneath, or it's not really a cream. This is a bleached body hair. I could get maybe a little bit heavier on that, but yeah, I'm going to take just a little bit extra. Cameron, relax, bud. Take a little bit extra on this. I'm just going to clean this up. Like I was saying, this is going to be our bottom section here. I just want to clean these, get all of the under fur and everything out. Transfer hands. I'm going to cut the tip off. Get rid of some of that. I have a little bit too much. Just cutting the tips off of that, and then I'm going to take this this bundle. I'm going to center it up right on the underside, and then I'm going to go 1 loose wrap, another loose, work a third through here, and I'm just going to pull down tight on that and flare that hair out. Everything's pretty clean. Pull straight down, make sure that hair's flared out, and make sure that it's right on the top. That center section is underneath. You have a nice clean belly to work with. And then we're going to shuffle this section as well. Just mix this stuff up. This is going to be our top section. Cam, relax, buddy. Just mixing that stuff up to where it feels like we have a nice blend in there. The black's a little bit heavier in the center, but I think we'll be all right. I just want to stack this, not because I'm using the tips, but because I want to get the majority of this the majority of this bundle, I want to be able to work with the center mass of it so it flares better for me. After shuffling everything around, it has a tendency to kind of be all over the place, so you'll catch the sweet spot on a couple pieces, you'll catch the tips. This just makes it a lot cleaner if you stack it. So I want to take just a touch out of there. Just a touch. I'm setting this right over the top now. I'm using the same thread path that I used for the bottom. And then I'm going to go one. Try not to pull any of that cream into the black and the yellow. I'll get a third in there. Pinch my sides, pull this down, and it really flares everything out nice for you. Some of those are a little bit shorter, but we're going to be all right. And then I just want to make sure that that center section, or that bottom section, stayed on the bottom. If you remember, if you watched the original DFT, that one rotated on me just a little bit, so I got to right the ship on this one. Make sure I don't mess up 2 in a row in my own pattern. Amateur hour here. If I do that, that looks pretty clean right there. I'm happy with how that looks. Now I'm just going to take my third section, or my third stack here, and I'm going to mix these two together, same as before. That one seems to be a little bit heavier on the black. I may have to grab some yellow if I can't get that to co-op. No, we're going to be good. We're going to be good. Alright, same as before, I'm going to throw this in the stacker, just even the tips up, make sure I get that center bundle, that center mass that I'm after. Just give that a light stack, line the tips up, drop half of them as you pull it out of the stacker. I'm going to cut the tips. Just even this stuff up on the back end as well. And pull out any of the short hairs that I have throughout here. Making sure that I'm getting the most hollow portion of this bundle that I can. Now this is the tricky part on a down-eyed hook, is when you're making a spin and you don't have a ton of room to work with. So make sure when you get that first wrap in there, I'm not blocking the camera, you go 1, 2, and you're on that underneath side of that hook, and then I just rotate this around, get myself a good full spin, and it doesn't fall off the front. I have good coverage on both the top and the bottom. I just feel for my eye, peel this stuff back, slightly pack that. Don't push with a whole lot there, just slightly pack that, 1, 2, and a third, and then I peel this stuff back, go ahead and whip finish, 3. What are they doing out there, Madison? One more whip finish, and now we're ready to trim this, and believe it or not, we're almost to the end of this fly. It takes a while tying this just straight through if you're tying a single. When I tie these for production and everything, it's a much faster process. I have everything already set off to the side, and I can clip through these pretty quick, but tying just a single and then also me explaining everything kind of slows stuff down, because sometimes it takes a while for me to get my thoughts together and articulate things how I want to. So that's the biggest hurdle that I face right here, I guess. Needless to say, this is going to wind up being a pretty lengthy video, but it's been a good pattern for me here. Cam, knock it off. So I'm just cleaning this stuff out. This is a nice flush cut on the bottom, making sure that when I get to the back section, and I should have put a straw there or something, I don't want to cut that throat section. I want that rust to come through on that underneath side. I want that rust coming through. There we go. You can see that right there. Not quite as apparent as the red, but I have the rust in there so you have the idea of what we're after on this. Now, when I do this, I'm not going with a really compact bend on this. I want this open because I want this nice flat, big fat sculpin head. Dang dog. She just got into her heat there, so she's a little bit worked up. Poor thing. Alright, like I was saying, a nice flat cut on that head, and you can see on the first pass right there, we have a nice fat section right there to where it's going to give us that taper going on the way back. Now I just want to clean this up a little bit. Just want to clean that up a little bit. And then flatten that section out just slightly. I want it nice and wide on this section, but I don't want it really rounded on the top. I want it to be able to cut through the water pretty good, but it's a pretty fine line because you got to watch how compact you wind up trimming that stuff, because if it's too compact, then it winds up being more buoyant than what it should be, and you can have a tough time getting it down to the depth that you want it. So I'm just going to trim these sides off slightly, and that one turned out really good. It's got all of the cream on the bottom, or all of the bleached on the bottom, and it's not kicked off to the side like it was on the original video that I did. That's looking pretty good. I'm just going to take this out, I'm going to trim it with the scissors, and I'm going to shut this one off because this video has gone on for quite some time. So just trimming this against the grain, I'm taking this and just giving myself that overall shape that I want. I'm not going really aggressive into this. I just want to get a little bit of a wedge right in that front, and I'm doing that with the scissors. It's a little bit easier to do it that way than trying to cut it with the razor blade. Going against the grain, and there we have that nice underneath side. It's a little heavy right there. I'll trim that stuff out here after I shut the camera off, but while I'm BSing right now, I can take a couple cuts through it. But I'll get that cleaned up. We'll be good to go. Cameron's about to lose her stuff over there. And we'll get this in the vise for one final rotation. You can see that I was saying that last stack that I threw in with the Chickabou, the color covers it all up. So I mean, but this section, now that that Chickabou's all dry, you can see that stuff going right down the backside. It gives you that nice mottled look. When this thing gets wet, it looks like a sculpin. I mean, it just really does. I mean, it fishes phenomenal. This one's going to be getting a lot of water time here this year, so hopefully get a few more variations on camera as we go through the year, maybe closer to fall or whatever it may be. But if you guys have any questions or comments on this, as always, leave them with me. I'll get back to you. Give that one quick spin. There you go. That is the DFT Sculpin, minus a little bit of trimming that I'm going to do on this one. Like I said, questions or comments, leave them with me. I know it was a long video, so thanks for hanging around for it. But we'll catch you guys next Wednesday.